In this gospel reading, what we see behind the details of the narrative is a very straightforward and simple point that Mark the evangelist illustrates for us. He is telling us as clearly as he can that this man, Jesus Christ, who is depicted in the home, in the house, preaching and teaching, is not merely a man, but Almighty God present in our midst. This is the point. And therefore, he shows him first, forgive the man his sins. He claims to be God because only God can forgive sins. And then when he is questioned, he gives the proof of it by speaking a word and healing the man who is paralyzed. He is inert. He cannot move himself at all. It takes 4 men to bring him to the Lord. But at a word, he stands up and walks. The point of this gospel is a clear and explicit revelation of Jesus Christ as God Most High. Only He can forgive sins. Only He can, with a word, He doesn't even touch him, raise up the paralyzed man and restore him to the fullness of life. As God created all things in the beginning with a word, even so with a word He heals this His creation. This Sunday of Great Lent, however, is not the Sunday of the paralyzed man who came in through the roof. It is the Sunday of St. Gregory Palamas. And St. Gregory Palamas is a theological saint. He made a theological point about the immanent presence of God within the creation and how this could possibly be so, considering what we know must be true about God. God being infinite and eternal and unknowable by humankind, it would seem should be impossible to be known within the creation. And yet, the testimony of the saints, all the way back, not just to be the beginning of the church, but all through the ages, the testimony of the church is that God does reveal Himself to us. He opens our eyes and allows those who seek Him to see Him. In short, it is the same point as St. Mark makes in this gospel. God is in our midst. Christ is in our midst. God is with us, as we say. St. Gregory makes then a distinction between the essence of God and the energies of God, and says, indeed, it is true, we cannot know God in His essence as He is, but we can know Him in His energies, in His action, as He reveals Himself to us. It is no less God for being the energies, but it is not at the same time as though we can contain and comprehend and put God in a box, understanding Him as He is. That is forever beyond our knowledge, but in His energies, He comes to us. He reveals Himself to us. He touches us. He raises us up. He heals us. This is the point of the gospel. This is the point that St. Gregory Palamas was upholding. God is with us. This is good news. And yet, it is not only good news that we can comprehend with our mind and speak with our mouth. if it does not touch our heart, if our action does not follow in a consistent way from this truth, then we find ourselves greatly at fault. And this indeed is what we have been discussing. We understand God is in our midst. He gives himself to us in not least and most importantly for us who are Christians. He gives himself to us in the elements of Holy Communion, in the bread and wine that become his body and his blood. He offers himself to us. He makes himself present for us. And we have been discussing what it means for us then to prepare to receive him, how we can approach him. But the beginning and the end and the middle and the all of this is simply that we live in a way that is consistent with this truth. Christ is in our midst. God is with us. We cannot live as though this were not so. Everything that we are, everything that we do, everything that we say, everything that we think, as we said, everything that we are must be transformed by this truth, by this encounter with the truth. Not only do we hear and understand and know that God is with us, we see him, we touch him, we taste him, and we are changed. This is indeed the entire point of Great Lent. That we take a moment to breathe, to reflect, to set aside the things of this world, to comprehend the truth of God in our midst. And comprehending, we open our hands and our hearts, and we ask him to make us whole. For it is this that he has come to do. As we see again with the paralytic, he comes for two purposes. He comes to raise us up, to heal us, to make us strong in our nature, which he does ultimately and perfectly in the resurrection. And he comes to forgive our sins. The two go together. We cannot have wholeness without forgiveness of sins. But forgiveness of sins is the token and the sign and the promise and the first fruits of the resurrection. What we are called to do on this Sunday of St. Gregory Palamas, what we are called to do in this great Lent, what we are called to do this coming Pascha, and indeed what we are called to do in all of our lives, is rejoice in this truth, is to live in this truth, is to proclaim this truth by our voices, by our bodies, by our very lives. May we find strength and wisdom and hope and faith and endurance to walk this path and to receive the blessings of the Lord. Please stand.